I've decided to put on my Nessie the Loch Ness Monster hat on for your occasion.
Well, fantastic. I mean, you either do that or bust out the whiskey and just start downing it.
I was too busy getting all this set up to do a nice pour.
I mean,
well, we can always excuse you if you would like to.
Jen told me that, like, if people were joining, the good job was to finish an entire bottle of Scotch single malt whiskey by the time I finish. We're gonna make a
I'm
fun.
out of here. Nope.
So, all right. So, Jen, should I just hit it, or what do you want me to do?
I guess typically I'll do a little introduction, but there's just a few of us. I just wanted to point out for anyone on the recording who we are. I am Jen Mitchell, owner and founder of Jen Mitchell Travel. We are a local agency in Naples, Florida, virtuoso agency, and Jonathan Epstein is the president of Celebrated Experiences, and he's here to talk about Scotland and a little bit about how things are going with travel to Scotland and what we're anticipating. So I'll leave the rest to you, though, and we can start asking some questions maybe.
Sure, yeah, let's do that, and then I'll walk through a presentation. That sounds great, Jen. Thanks.
Okay.
So do you want to ask a question or two, or should I just lead the presentation and maybe questions at the end, however you want to do it?
Well, I mean, maybe a couple questions. So we were talking earlier and about what you all have been up to, since the start of the pandemic and since clients have not been able to travel to Scotland. So maybe you can tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think at this, typically at this time, we're still doing so many itineraries, a lot of last minute bookings, a lot of bookings for the fall, Scotland, and a lot of people don't expect this, but my favorite months actually to travel are in the fall. October and November are just great months to just really get off the beaten path, avoid tourists. But we're not doing a lot of itinerary creation right now unless it's for 2021, which we are doing a bunch of. But I think for the most part, it's just been touching base with our guides and hotel partners. Unfortunately, our hotels, and the good news, all the Scottish hotels were able to reopen yesterday, July 15th. And most of our partners are open. So places that you may have heard of before, like Glen Eagles and Waldorf Astoria, Edinburgh, the Caledonian, the Torridon up in Scotland, a lot of the best properties have reopened as of yesterday. Our guides still are not doing what they're typically doing, which is guiding. They're sitting around and waiting, which is sad, but we're touching base with them. Some of them are creating really fun video content for us that we've been able to share on Facebook. And but for the most part, just, really staying in touch with people like you, Jen. And, you're one of the best in the business. We love working with you, and just making sure that we're providing content that's helpful for you and other elite travel advisors.
Well, you have been providing great content, and I've been loving watching your Facebook Lives and your interviews. I think they've been great. That's what inspired me to do this. So,
thanks. That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, I think I think in boredom, I think we just wanted to be edgy and different and give people something different at a time when it could be pretty down. And we just wanted to be upbeat and positive, because this thing is going to end. And when it does, travel's going to take off like a rocket.
We hope so. I agree. So, what are one of the things that you think make Celebrated Experiences unique when it comes to designing itineraries?
Well, first, I think more than anything is our hyper obsession with mega personalization. And I know that was a lot of hypers and megas, but I want to be clear. Like, there's nothing more OCD, anxiety inducing in me and my team when we're having to do, just send me your best 7-night Ireland or your best 7-night Scotland. It's not how we think. I mean, every trip should be different. Every client, whether it's your sister traveling or your best friends, you may like different styles of hotels, or one person may love visiting a chocolate maker. Another person wants to spend more time at a distillery. Others want both. A family wants a very different thing a lot of times than a honeymoon couple or an anniversary couple or two couples traveling together. So I think the first thing is just really that edge on personalization and giving clients what they deserve, which is their very own trip. I think the second thing is just thinking differently. I think a lot of times in places like England and Scotland and Ireland, there's these just same ways of doing trips. And I think we've tried to be edgy and disruptive in this space since we started. And that they're a great example is St. Andrews. Abnormal people would say, oh, St. Andrews, I shouldn't go there. I don't golf. But fewer than 10% of the itineraries we design to St. Andrews have golfers. 90% are about the history, visiting. I mean, normally people love visiting seaside towns. There just happens to be an epic golf course there.
Yeah.
So we definitely don't avoid St. Andrews for people who don't like golf. But I think most tour operators out there just kind of do the same old thing. And that
Pattern.
drives us crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So what kind of requests are you seeing right now?
Requests that we're seeing right now, honestly, it's a ton for 2021. We were actually getting quite a bit of fall, but that's pulled back. It's just things are so unclear. But right now, it's people who are smartly looking ahead and booking a year out for 2021, so they get that hotel room they want, the golf tee time they want, the distillery experience they want, or just ensuring they have an actual itinerary, because 2021 is looking like it's going to be so busy with everybody from 2020 who's put their trip off to 2021, and then just people who would have booked in 2021.
Well, hopefully our clients will think ahead and
Yes.
follow that advice. My personal favorite right now, as far as like TV binging, because I know we're all doing it, has been Outlander. So this is perfect timing.
We are going to talk Outlander today. Linda and Connie, two clients of yours, I wonder if they watch Outlander. It's speaking of edgy, a little risque.
It is.
But no, it's a really fun show about the Highlands of Scotland. We're actually going to touch on it in a few minutes.
Great. Okay, so I'll let you take over from here if we have questions at the end.
Great, sounds good. So there's so many different regions of Scotland, and today we're focusing on not the Highlands of Scotland. We're focusing on one region within the Highlands of Scotland, the Central Highlands. And we find, and it's always best to start with the map. So let me kind of start here. Move this out of the way. Okay. So basically, you've got Edinburgh down here. You can see it in the bottom. Let me actually see if I can pull up my pointer. Here we go. So down here, I'll make a mess. We got Edinburgh, and then we've got Glasgow. Under this area is a small part of Scotland, the Borders region, right before you get to England. But for most Scotland itineraries that we get, they either start or end in Edinburgh or Glasgow, because that's where the international airports are primarily for the US market. And then they enjoy those two cities, which are very, very different places. And then they head up into other regions. Two other things to mention are Aberdeen, which is right here, and Inverness. And they are important because many Americans, to get to Scotland, connect through Europe, such as connecting through Amsterdam. And Amsterdam is really quick, hour and a half access into Aberdeen, Inverness. So a real clever way to do a Scotland itinerary. But today we're going to focus on the Highlands, which really, you can see where it starts getting mountainous about right here. That's the Highlands, everything kind of north of here. So what do we see? That is a huge expanse. A lot of people think the Highlands are the size of Napa Valley. They don't understand that it is bigger than Belgium. But only about 240,000 people in that huge expanse. So the Scots were doing social distancing well before social distancing was cool. It's only about 15 people per mile. So not a lot of crowds at all. So we're going to focus on that central area of the Highlands called the Central Highlands. The Highlands, really, you could do 5 or 6 different parts of the Highlands, and each would be 2 hours away from the next. So you could almost do an entire 14-night Highland itinerary if you really loved the outdoors and scenic beauty. But that's really the number one reason people go to this part of Scotland is they want to see that beautiful scenery. And it starts really with the Cairngorms National Park. That's the largest national park in the entire United Kingdom. So remember, the United Kingdom, England, Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland. So this is the biggest national park. On the top right corner is Glencoe. We're going to touch on that a bit more in a second. If you love scenic drives, Scotland is the spot. Whether you're on a self-drive trip or you want to take advantage of a really fun Scottish driver guide. If you don't love the idea of driving on the other side of the road, that stretch of road that you're seeing right there in that bottom left picture, as you get closer to that lock, it's very remote, no cell phone coverage, and I have actually gotten a flat tire there. But about 15, 20 minutes later, a lovely person stopped by, helped me, all was well. The bottom right corner is the Great Glen. When you've heard of Loch Ness before, Loch Ness is in the Great Glen. It is just a huge, huge valley, and absolutely beautiful. This is another picture from Cairngorms National Park. And guys, this is not from some sort of amazing guidebook. That is a picture I took with my iPhone in between hotel inspections. And this is another picture I took with my iPhone. This is Glencoe. If you know anybody who is a McDonald or a Campbell, it has extra special meaning to them. There was a really sad massacre in this valley where the Campbells slaughtered McDonald's. If you ever have seen Mad Men, here we are about 300, 400 years after this occurred. Mad Men actually had an episode where a McDonald didn't let a Campbell into the school. The McDonald was the head of the admissions team. So that rivalry between Campbells and McDonald's exists today, and we have guides who are both Campbells and McDonald's, so we can have some fun with that. But Glencoe, even if you don't care about the history, it is stunning. So this is an example of what Glencoe looks like in November. But if you were seeing a picture of this in summertime, it would be the brightest greens you've ever seen. And then from there, we're heading to the North Coast 500. It's an incredible driving route that's 500 kilometers long in the very, very top of the Highlands of Scotland. So it's one of the world's most scenic drives. But yes, usually our clients have driver guides for this because you can see how narrow the roads can be in parts. And the scenery definitely also translates to the locals. You're going to see a lot more cows and sheep than people. And this is a Highland cow, which they refer to as a Highland coo. And then no one just wants to go and travel to see beautiful scenery, or some people do. I actually would love nothing more right now. But other people also want the culture and the history. Blair Castle is a great example of that. We're going to touch on more about castles in a second, because we also make sure that we don't want to castle our clients to death when they come to Scotland. But this is an example of a true historic castle. This is the Athol family, but that's their Scottish name. The more traditional kind of Christian surnames would be Murrays and Stewarts, but this is what their family home would be. And it's one of the most sensational castles in Scotland, right near a village called Pitlochry in the heart of the Highlands. You have Culloden Battlefield. That is the last, which, yes, Outlander plays a major role of Culloden Battlefield. But this battlefield was the last battle fought on the land, because obviously in World War II, there was an air battle over Britain. But this was the last land battle. And it was 1746. Bonnie Prince Charlie, who was a Stuart. So if you know any of the kings that have names like James I, Charles I, those are Stuarts. And Bonnie Prince Charlie tried to get them back on the throne. That did not go that well for him. It was a very, very quick battle. It was over within an hour. And it also began a very sad time in Scottish history, the Highland clearances. About 150 to 250,000 Scots were relocated from the Highlands to cities, or eventually came to places like America. If you ever hear about the Highland Scots in places like North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, a lot would have come over in this period. A lot of the clans were forced to leave. Also, things like playing the bagpipes, tartan, were either against the law or completely restricted. From Highland tragedy to chocolate, not the most glorious transition, but here we go. The Highland chocolatier, that's a guy named Ian Burnett. He is fabulous, and our clients go behind the scenes with him and learn how to make chocolate. I love that he has a dark chocolate truffle that won world's best dark chocolate truffle 2 or 3 years ago. So who would have thought? You head to Scotland for the chocolate. And on the bottom right, You've definitely heard of the whiskey. So we'll touch on that a bit more in a second. But here we go. So Glenmorangie, a very famous distillery. So the Central Highlands of Scotland have a few different regions within it for whiskey. One of them is Speyside. You may have heard the Malt Whiskey Trail. That's in Speyside. Whiskies like Macallan or Glenfiddich. In the North Highlands above Inverness, some of my favorite distilleries, Glenmorangie, and also another one would be Balblair, which is a hot distillery now. And but we don't just love doing distillery tours. We definitely do that, and we definitely do tastings. But we have experiences you can do at distilleries. You can hang out with the master distiller. You can learn all about single malt whiskey and how to create your own single malt whiskey from various barrels from that year's production, another year's production. So all sorts of wacky things we can do with distilleries for people who are interested. We love sending people to family farms, especially sheep farms, and you can learn all about sheep dogs and how hilariously fun they are. And then we talked a little bit about castles. So these are all various types of castles in Scotland. On the top left corner, you have a great example of a palace style of castle. That's Dunrobin Castle. So if you love seeing beautiful art on the walls, incredible antiques, beautiful furniture, that's like a stately home visit. That's the kind of castle like that. On the top right corner is Cawdor Castle. And if you're really good at Shakespeare, you may recognize that name because the Thanes of Cawdor feature in Macbeth. But Cawdor Castle is a great castle for meeting the people who still live within the castle, and we can set up experiences with the owners. The bottom left would not be a castle you'd ever want to sleep at. That is a ruined castle, Uckert Castle, and that is a good picture of Loch Ness. So Uckert Castle stands right on Loch Ness. And then in the bottom right corner are examples of castles that maybe you're just going to stop on the side of the road and take a great picture of, which are all over Scotland. And this is Eilean Donan Castle. And from there, if people are looking to keep busy, not just see castles and eat lots of chocolate and drink lots of whiskey and see lots of scenery, we can help you burn calories too. So there's lots of boating and kayaking opportunities. Some of the boating, of course, power boats that can take you, and you can learn the history of places like Loch Lomond, just under the Central Highlands, to Loch Ness, which is in the Central Highlands. Shooting experiences, such as hunting pheasant or grouse. Grouse is the big shooting sport in Scotland. Of course, you can go deer stalking as well, but this is something that we can organize for clients. The bottom left corner, you got to be pretty adventurous for this. This is called coast steering. And you basically go on hikes along the coast, which involve jumping into the water and climbing out during various types of times during the hike. And then if that's too edgy, we do have normal hiking too, which we love. And golf. Can you believe it? A Scotland presentation that took us this far to even bring up golf. But yes, Scotland is world famous for golf, as it should be. There's so many great courses. It is the home of golf. So even if you just want to play a round of golf in Scotland to have that experience, that would be great. But this is the major courses in the Central Highlands would be Royal Dornoch, which is in the world's top 100, top 10 actually. You also have Nairn and Castle Stewart, which is in the world's top 100. It actually hosted the Scottish Open. Fishing is huge. We can do regular casting on lakes, or we can do fly fishing on rivers. And then if you're really into it, we'll even set you up with a good old caber toss. To be fair, no celebrated client has ever tossed a caber, but they have gone to the Highland Games. And caber tossing is one example of the hilarious sports that you would see at a Highland Games. And that guy looks exactly like many people who are in the Highland Games. So the actual sport is it's about 100 feet tall, this huge, this part of a tree. It's the trunk. And you flip it. It's not who can flip it the farthest. You have to completely flip it an entire 360. And however much it lands at 12 o'clock versus like being at 10 or 11 o'clock, a straight line, that's the one who wins the caber toss. And Scotland's also home to falconry. It's a great activity for families. And then some of our unique and exclusive experience. You know, Jen is so good at telling us all about our clients. And as we learn more, we can do more exclusive things. So for example, if we learn that you really are into military history, we can do some incredible things at Culloden Battlefield, so you can really understand the lay of the land in a battle, a little bit like a Civil War battlefield. What if we find out that you have Scottish history? They do wonderful history, more in-depth history experiences at Culloden Battlefield as well. Some people really love artisanship, and there's some at Johnston's of Elgin. There are some really wonderful chances to see all the knitwear that they make in Scotland and all the cashmere, and we can get the clients behind the scenes. Whenever you see generally a French label with Scottish cashmere, generally it's just being white labeled, and it's often made by Johnston's of Elgin. So for example, Chanel has some nicer scarves that are cashmere. They would come from Johnston's of Elgin. Gordon and MacPhail, for clients who are really interested in whiskey. These are the guys that made single malt whiskey so popular back at the beginning of the 20th century. They were buying whiskey barrels off of distilleries, and then they would create their own bottlings. And we're friends with the family, and they do really cool experiences for our clients in their boardroom. And of course, there's Outlander. So if we find out that somebody is interested in Outlander, we get so many opportunities to blow them away. We can take them to the Clava Cairns, which is where she touches the magical stone that sends her back in time. But if you're not interested in that element, it's still pretty cool to see the Clava Cairns. This is not some Hollywood set. This is a megalithic site from thousands of years ago. And just other various sites around Scotland that are featured in Outlander. And you know, we're obsessed with hotels at Celebrated. I think it's one of the things that really bonds us so well with Jen, because yes, Jen cares deeply about building great itineraries, but she also wants to make sure people are staying in really special places. And when you travel to a place like Scotland, a stay at a hotel is as important as what you're doing during the day, because the sense of place matters so much. So some examples, we have a beautiful hotel in town in Inverness called Nesswalk. It's the newest 5-star hotel in the Highlands. On the top right corner, dating from 1887, is the Torridon, one of the most exclusive properties in the Highlands of Scotland. A drive to the Torridon feels like Jen has sent you to the end of the world, and then you make it there and you're like, wow, I cannot believe she found this place for us. Inverlochie Castle, one of the world's most famous castle hotels, and that's in a really central part of Scotland, Fort William in the Central Highlands. The bottom right corner is a great example of a baronial castle. That's Isle of Eriska on its own private island. You don't even have to take a ferry to get there though, because it's connected by a bridge. Another castle is Fonab Castle. Now this is actually a contemporary castle. It's not contemporary on the outside. That is a true old castle, but they've designed it very contemporary in the interiors, which is very fun for people to have that yin and yang of style. Glencoe House is one of our most popular properties now because it is made for social distancing. They are huge spaces, the rooms, and they don't even have a main dining room. All the dinners are served in your room because you have your own dining room tables. So a really nice extended stay kind of experience, or even for 2 or 3 nights, is Glencoe House. Bottom left corner is Culloden House, also famous in Outlander. But before that, this would have been the house that would have stood here previously, is where Bonnie Prince Charlie would have stayed the night before the massacre at Culloden. In the bottom right corner is a contemporary city town hotel called Rockpool Reserve. And that is kind of it. So I'd love to take any questions or any thoughts, but I just wanted to give you a little tiny taste of just the Central Highlands of Scotland. I could have done just as long a presentation on the East Highlands, the Northwest Highlands, the West Coast and West Highlands. So Scotland has got a ton to it. But would love to welcome you anytime you guys want to come.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. This was great. I love how enthusiastic you get in your presentations. It really shows how much you care.
Well, I'm very lucky. I mean, I could be hanging sheetrock for a living. I get to talk about Scotland. I'm a lucky, lucky guy.
And so does any of you have any questions? I know, Linda, you're muted in case you have any questions. Connie, if you have any questions, I'll open it up.
What's the situation in terms of U.S. Citizens getting into Scotland at this point in time?
Great question. As of right now, there is a 14-day quarantine for arrivals. Now, at first glance, that's like, oh, that's terrible. However, we also have a number of homes in Scotland that we can book for Jen. And these are the opposite of Airbnb. Everything that's celebrated, inspected properties that are also managed, so you're not on your own. So we actually have a client who arrived into the UK today to do a 14-day quarantine. Actually, they chose to do it at a hotel. And then once that 14-day quarantine is over, they're free to roam. So there's a lot of people who definitely have cabin fever right now. And if they have the budget for it, why not do basically what we're doing in the US right now, which is hanging out at home a lot, do that for 14 days, but a legit quarantine, watching lots of movies, reading lots of books, but then you could have the most magical itinerary ever at a time when normally our expectations right now are, for example, in September and October, only 5% of normal amounts of visitors will actually be there. So you're walking around things like Edinburgh Castle without the crowds. So it's a unique opportunity because much of Europe is shut off. Ireland also has a 14-day quarantine right now. So imagine staying in a thatched cottage with totally modern amenities and a gorgeous kitchen. Food's getting delivered. You got to stay put for 14 days. But once that's over, you can go and have a great itinerary.
Have you traveled yourself in this period of time or no?
Not yet. I'm taking my first trip next week. I'm taking my family on a trip to the Caribbean, to one of the islands that we can go in. So I'm doing a family vacation there. A little bit harder because of my kids to do the 14-day quarantine because with school starting up and everything. So I do think though in the fall, especially if there's remote learning, they'll be coming with me or I'll be going on my own. We annually inspect every property that we work with. So I'm definitely going to be getting over to Europe at some point, even if it means quarantining first.
And I'm just curious, are these individualized tours or are they more with groups? I go by myself and I like to be with other people. So
good question. So what we do at Celebrated are individual itineraries, completely personalized for you, or your friends, couples, that's what we do. But there are absolutely escorted tours in Scotland as well. Not what we do, but there are some lovely companies that do that. Some people want to mix. So they do some maybe group touring when they're in the city, because there's some nice group tours that you can do and get to know other people. And then once you go into the Highlands of Scotland, doing that more independently as well. So it just really depends on what you're looking for.
Thank you.
Sure.
I love that idea of quarantining there. I mean, especially with, the Naples community, excluding the family side, there's a lot of people with just time on their hands. And if you're quarantining here, why not do it there for a little bit, stay in a home and relax, and then go off and do your touring when it's not crowded. I love it.
Yeah, we have that Isle of Ariska hotel that I showed you on its own private island. They have these hilltop reserve homes that are just on the top of a mountain. And all you're doing is looking around at all these incredible islands of the West Hebrides. You're just chilling out for 2 weeks, decompressing, and then go and have a great itinerary. Now, obviously, that's not a $1,000 trip, but, I think for people who do have the budget to do something extraordinary right now, without extraordinary pricing, because it's not over the top at all. Some of these homes are under $1,000 a night. So you can really do that experience and then have a nice itinerary afterwards.
Great. Any other questions? Connie, do you have any questions?
Just to you, was that the hotel we stayed at in Scotland on the Isle of Risca? We were on an island close to Fort William.
Yes, that would have been it. So it's about an hour and a half away, close to Oban, O-B-A-N.
Okay.
Yep. So
That might have been the one.
You would have gone across a wooden bridge to get there. Click, clack, click, clack. You head across the bridge. How many years ago was it?
Oof.
Like 8, 5? I don't know.
5, 6.
Do you remember like there would have been a really nice dining room, very old world.
Yeah, the dining room, I think, was kind of in the conservatory, it looked like.
Yes,
Yeah.
you got it.
And that was the one.
You
Yeah.
got it.
Yep.
Yep. Good place. New owners there.
Mm.
Lots of investment, upgraded significantly. Every bathroom has been redone, and a new management team as well. So they're doing a great job at Isle of Ariska.
Good.
All
Yeah,
right.
when we got back from that trip, I told my husband, I have now had my lifetime quota of Irish whiskey.
Yeah, well, or Scottish whiskey, exactly. Well,
We
yeah,
did nothing but a distillery tour.
Mhm.
oh wow.
To 2, and we went from there. And it was,
Yeah, I will say, on the other hand, my wife always hated Scottish whiskey. Took her to Scotland, and it's just about finding your whiskey. Maybe you didn't find yours yet. She found hers, and now she is so obsessed with Scotch. Like, duty free is dangerous for us because she's always picking up
Yeah.
2 bottles of duty free.
yeah. I'm kind of that way with gin. So I found a whiskey distillery in the Cotswolds of England
Yeah, yeah,
that had a gin distillery with it.
that's right. Cotswolds Distillery. You know
I
your.
did Scotch for a week with you. Would you do one afternoon of gin with me?
Man, there is
Get there,
great.
and then we find out that they do whiskey as well.
Yeah, of course, of course. So that's the secret. Most gin distilleries that are making, not all of them, but a
Yeah.
lot of the gin distilleries that have started in the last 5 to 10 years, well, what do we know about Scotch whiskey? It takes a long time to age in barrels, right? So they need to make money in the meantime. So they've all started creating
What
gin.
happened there?
Well, Jen, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Hopefully, maybe we'll get on a call again later, and or in person, which is even better,
Good.
one day soon, and talk about a different spot. You know.
Sounds great. Well, thank
Great.
you guys very much. Connie, Linda, nice to meet you guys.
Can I just make a suggestion?
Yeah, sure, Linda. Sure.
Thank you for doing the presentation, but it was very hard to see the pictures with, I don't know how to change where the photographs, the people's faces are, so I couldn't.
Oh, yeah, if you go next time, all you do is you go to the top of it and you see there's a bar, you can scroll and just push that somewhere else.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You are the only one who has control over your picture. I was thinking about that yesterday because I had
Yeah.
to move it around a lot, and I probably should have pointed that out at the beginning, so I will next time. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But thank you for
Thanks,
taking
Linda.
the time.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Bye,
Good to know
everybody.
that.
See you all.
Take
Okay.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.